which questions or what types of themes or objectives are they performing lowest on?
So just this class, like third and seventh, performed lowest on the question about religion. So what all the different religions believed about gods. So it was the question that asked them to be sort of most detailed across the widest range. Their percentages for short answer are pretty similar to the other classes.
Okay.
They struggled as well with social hierarchy in India, sort of the two-part question. And they were strongest on the Code of Hammurabi, which makes sense to me.
So these are, so in terms of like lowest on the question about religion, okay, which is similar to periods 3 and 7, as well as this one number 4, right, about social hierarchy in India. So these are the two short answer questions that they struggle the most with.
Class numbers, so 88% of the class got the Hammurabi's code, 4 out of 4. My class average is 60% on the question on religions, 69% for social hierarchy. So that's in general. Okay.
So what do you attribute this low score to? I guess we might end up repeating a lot of what you had. Do you have the same reasons?
I think it's about, I think has a lot to do with them having a bunch of at-bats at this type of question and knowing the level of rigor that's expected and the level of detail that's expected. I modeled a few in class. I sort of showed them what answer would get a 4, what would get a 3, what would get a 2, what would get a 1. But they just haven't written short answer questions for me. This was the first try at it. So I think after we'd done the religion unit, I'd asked them a bunch of questions like this, and this was the second time they were doing it on the test, not the first. It would have been easier for them to organize their ideas. And then, as we talked about before, just a question about the students who fail, A, what they're doing in class when they don't understand, because some of these students, a lot of work shows me that they're not understanding what's happening in class. So what are they doing then in class when they're confused? What am I doing then when they're confused in class? And then when they're studying, at what point in the study process should they be realizing that they don't have the information they need to go back or need to come in for help? Yeah. There are a lot of missed times for identifying confusion or prioritizing what they need to be working on my part and on their part.
Okay, so you're saying it's similar to what we talked about earlier about the other classes, but they didn't have as many at-bats, right, at this kind of question. And so they might not know the level of detail or rigor you expect.
Well, and also just how to organize their ideas in short answer form. It's different.
So, you're saying you didn't really give them that opportunity during, after their religion study to do that?
So for example, for this one, they had a chart with all the religions filled in and gods, how it was founded, how humans should treat each other. So they had this in chart form,
okay,
but they haven't done it in written form, and also they were doing their charts independently, so there was a lot of variation in the quality of the charts.
Okay.
Students who very diligently did their homework had a ton of information to put here. Students who struggle with that, it was pretty sparse.
So if you had given them a question that asked them to create a chart, would you expect that they would do relatively well?
I think I'd see the same thing. Students who did that homework assignment well would, it would translate here. But the idea of the test not being the first time they're asked to organize content a specific way,
right?
I'd sort of envision the test as a synthesis, and they should be able to synthesize. But that's a skill as well, so I should teach the synthesis, and then together we answer a question like this, and then they answer either a similar question or this question again on the test, but weeks later when they have to prove that they still know it.
You also started to brainstorm some reasons why they might not have been able to perform as well on number 5, and you said there might have been a variance in the quality of charts that they had. Some students might not have done the homework assignment chart or done it correctly.
Right.
And you also brought up this, you mentioned this wonderance about how well they studied it. So with the assumption that if they did the homework chart perfectly and studied like you taught them to study, they should have been able to show up and write a paragraph that met your standard, right? Mm-hmm. So besides giving them more at-bats at doing this, more practice, and continuing to model like really well-written short answer responses, what are some things you might do for the whole class to address this? 2 things, to address like quality control of the content that they have organized,
right,
and how they study it.
I think one thing that this has me thinking about is, so I asked kids the first day of studying to rate their understanding of different topics. I go through a study guide and say, I know this, I don't know this, I kind of know this. And even to sort, like to tactily sort content into different categories. I know this, I don't know this. But the only question I'm asking them is, do you know this? And I think there are things that at least this group of students that failed think they know that they don't know. That they don't have this self-awareness yet to answer that question of like, I know these things, I don't know these things. And a more realistic way to do that might be quizzes. Like quizzes that aren't graded, just like, try this, it's what the test is going to look like, or try this, these are some short answer, or define these words. Prove to yourself that you know them rather than just sort of circling them as I know, I don't know. So to me, that there are kids who are listening and just able to pass the sort of more concrete assessments that I give, vocab, geography, terms, like specific stuff, but are having more trouble with the overall concepts or really making sense of all this. One thing I'm trying for one student that's struggling in another class is at the end of class she writes me a note saying, yes or no, I understood what happened in class today and here's what I have questions about. Sort of a holistic check-in with her. I don't know if that would work so large scale.
Can I clarify? So you're saying, according to the data, there's some students that are surprisingly low?
In a crew of them, like a really significant part of the class.
Okay, but these are students that
participate
and they perform rather well on more concrete, like short assessments, like vocab assessments. But then on this test, there seems to be a gap between what you would expect them to do and then how they perform, like when they're asked to synthesize. Okay. And something you're doing with one other student in another class is at the end of each lesson you do a quick, you force them to do a quick self-assessment. Mm-hmm. They write their questions and they sort of say holistically whether they got it or didn't.
Yeah, it's more of a personal support for a student who feels very lost.
Okay.
With this class, with
yeah, I was going to ask which students in this period might you want to try something like that with?